I saw someone's coming in. Oh, a couple people are. Bonnie's in here. Irene's here. Aurea, they're connecting. Dimitra. Dimitra, you froze. Are you still there? I see Bonnie. We see Irene. Do you hear us? We see you. Hi, everyone. Everyone looks great. Just Dimitra's a little frozen in time. But I think everyone's okay. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to begin with our themes. Let me go into my email where I can get into our themes, and we'll go from there. Irene, good to see you. We've missed you. I hope you and your family are all doing well. All right, let me find it real quick. If you haven't had a chance to, it's great to come as well for the Tuesday mornings. We have a good group. We have a good pareja. Teodora is definitely cheery-eyed and very sharp to wit.
It will be 9:30 or 10.
We'll move it to 10, yes, us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can't make it with all my.
I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. So we had a discussion yesterday. We had a discussion yesterday for adult spiritual enrichment. I'm sorry, coffee with Father Chris and spirituality. And about 10 minutes of a discussion of 9:30 or 10 o'clock to start. I couldn't believe it. And mind you, most of them are older. They're my elders here. And they actually went later. I thought everyone wakes up early. No?
5 o'clock in the morning.
So from 5, you can't get your 5?
Because I have to wait an hour from one field to the other, and I have to eat something.
Wow.
And
No,
I have to wash too.
Oh, okay. All right, actually, okay. Then category ramen, no problem. Okay. Okay. We're not saying anything bad. You are all spring chickens.
Yeah, you can be my panda.
Okay. All right. So, this is always a good one. I'm gonna bring out our Bible for this one as well, too. So I'll bring out some points to discuss. So tonight's theme, everyone, is blessed are those who fast, for they will eat at the great feast in the kingdom. So Makari Ooh, that's a good one. All right. Let's hear this one. So, what does it mean to fast? Give it to me. You're the sage wisdom. Tell me what it means to fast.
Well, I was told fast is not just the food, it's what comes out of the mouth.
True.
And we have to do good things if we can fast. I have to have protein in the morning. So I can take communion. That's the bottom line.
Okay. So Rosso constitutes fasting with communion and what she has to do. What do you guys think? What's fasting do, Louis?
Well, I think it helps you focus on your Christianity. I understand the part of the reason we're supposed to fast, so that, as I've been told in this class actually, is that what we save in money and fasting, we're supposed to give in alms. I don't know that. Yeah.
Anyone else? Craig, Nico?
I would say, in my opinion, 80% of it is denying yourself, 20%, the prayer, fasting, and alms giving.
I thought part of it too is, you step away from the material, you step toward the spiritual more. Yeah. Right.
Why is it broken up into periods and days? Why can't you fast all the time? Can you?
Well, the vegetarians do.
Well,
incorrect. That's a bad answer.
Some monks do, I'm sure.
That's a bad answer, though. You're constituting fasting with food again.
Yes.
You heard what I said? That was a trick question. Why don't we fast all the time? Because it's everything we just all talked about. The food, but the self-reflection for the humility and prayer. That's why always, every year when we get into the Triodion, the great period, it then leads into great and holy Lent. Those Sundays are preparatory for you to think, not just to say publican and Pharisee. If I say publican and Pharisee now, you talk to anyone that has no 2.0 understanding of their faith has no idea what I'm saying. What's a publican? They'll relate to Republican. Okay, that's how we think now. A Pharisee, they know is a hypocrite, right? It's a bartender, even better. So when you get those statements, what does it mean to us? Why is it so powerful that we have these preparatory periods? Whether it's Lent, it's the Triodion, that encompasses Lent as well too. Obviously, we know the fast. There's 4 technically defined periods. First is Lent, then you'll go to Advent, Decade Augusto, and then the least participated one, I believe, has to be the Apostles' Fast. The Apostles' Fast is not from what we're understanding, even studying the church fathers and even the historians of the church, it wasn't something that was as actively participated in. And if it was very minimal leading into the great feast of Peter and Paul and the Synod feast of the Holy Apostles. Because you're thinking about it, I mean, if you actually talk to many other churches, so it's not uniform. The church of Antioch, right, the Antiochians, they don't fast during that period. After Pentecost, or I'm sorry, that's actually not correct. Please, I apologize. During the Pentecostalion, which are the 50 days after Pascha, we, after the first week, go back to our normal schedule, right? We fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. The Antiochians do not fast the whole 50 days. The whole 50 days is the Pentecostalion. They symbolize the celebration of the resurrection of our Lord. And then you're going to say, what's the purpose? I go back to the definition of when I talk to people in general about fasting. I know I've talked to some of you. We've talked into a spiritual manner, confession or whatever, but really fasting is to the individual person, to the degree and to what they can handle. But it goes down to one end goal. What's the goal of it? What is the goal of fasting? What should come out of fasting? Chris, what do you feel?
Make you feel better, to get to God, to get closer to your religion.
Right. So then I go back to my original question. Why don't we do it all the time? Or why is it so hard? It's the hard, but we all think we're humans, we're conditioned. We always think first and foremost, material is food in this manner. We always think about the food. Woe is me, I can't eat meat. And like, I can tell you when it's just general periods, it'll go about after a while of eating like the same stuff. If it's a burger or if it's macaronia or if it's chicken and stuff like that, I'm like, you almost want to mix. And then when we're also witnessing, as you always hear them talk about, you hear all these great dietitians and doctors and physicians will say the most ideal diet that you hear quite often is the Mediterranean or similar to a Greek one. But then you hear them what they say because of the olive oil, because of the lentils, the vegetation, the mixing up of the food. So it's not predominantly protein based. And you hear the mix of it. So I think that's the problem that we don't see internally because we just go with the flow. And then I always tell people, fasting with all of us here tonight, fasting simply, it's just like you have a car. If you don't give a car a tune-up, an oil change, whether it's now they pushed it back to 6 months, right? Before it used to be every 3 months. Now it's 6 months because of the advancements in the oil and stuff too. What ends up happening? It builds gunk, it gets more wear and tear, and you're not taking care of it. What about you? Your bodies? Well, we say physical, right? If we don't take care of ourselves physically, what happens? Gluttony, I eat more, I enjoy the vain participations of life, but then we get into a struggle. Why don't we see that about our spiritual self? That's where the self-reflective is very absent. And I think what we get lost in the situation is we turn it into ourselves. I'm always in an attitude where I laugh when I hear people, and when we go into our study Bibles and however we're studying, people will take this verse and take it out of context for their own personal gain or perspective. And then I look and I'm like, but Christ went before he began his ministry and fasted in the wilderness for 40 days. Why? Why did he do that? He's God and fully man. Why did he fast for 40 days?
To teach us to do the same way.
Later. Yeah, we didn't know about that, right? That makes it a con on us, but more so, why did he do it physically? Because then what do we know? What comes out of the fast the most? What was the biggest theme out of the fast? I can promise you, as a priest, the periods of Lenten, such as, actually all of them. Well, more so the 3. Megali Sarakosti, Advent, and Hispanagias. so scheduled, it's excellent for me. Externally, I don't have to worry about stuff. There's no sacraments, right? Because it's a fast period. So you kind of know what you're doing, you kind of go from there. Then peeks its little head, that little pirasmon. Usually those pirasmons, those little things that take us off the temptations. Oh man, it's not, and usually it's something that's very either irrelevant or something very emotional to your core. So that it can really throw you off the course. Because that's what the whole aspect of the devil is what he's trying to do. Can anyone attest to that? I mean, it's not just with fasting. When you're trying to pray, when you try to come to church, when you try to do good, what happens usually most of those times?
You gotta block some bunch of thoughts.
Anything, right? I mean, we say it. I mean, here's the problem. I said this a couple weeks ago. I said, everyone knows about the golden rule. How did you learn about it? Now, no one will say, oh, I read it in the Bible or it's from Jesus, right? They'll say my mom did or whatever, or inherently I was understood. So now the problem is we're all inherently good people. We all want to be with Christ. No one says no. I've never seen a survey where if we're at a church and you say, what, does everyone want to be with Christ? And the answer is no. So then the question, then everyone says yes. So then the next question, the subsequent question is, why don't you? That's the hard answer. Why don't I stay with Christ? That's why when you look at monastics, right? And their lifestyle is a style of fasting. But don't forget, even though they fast, as we believe it, they also, when they have feasts, they'll have fish. So that's a luxury. They'll have, I've seen a gliko, or I've even witnessed, which is very humbling, that they'll be at a strict fast, and if you're a visitor, they will still bring out a gliko to you. Where to them, that'd be a great temptation, right? They don't eat them often, but they'll bring a gliko, and the gliko is a sweet, we all know that, right? And so they offer that to the people because it's out of the term of philoxenia, love for a foreigner, right? They don't know. And so they're just doing that to honor. But the greater question to us is, why do we struggle so mightily? And because if you've all understood this, every single one of these, I ask you the same question. Why do we struggle with them? And we've gone to the grand scheme of things where we can really put as one simple answer, but it's not a correct answer, as environment, society doesn't help. I go back and I say, can anyone tell me any society that helped someone build a relationship with Christ? Was there ever a Christian society? Truly. No. I mean, you can go to the reign of the Byzantium and stuff like that. There were wars, there were struggles, there were famines, there were plagues.
There were evil emperors sometimes.
100%.
We weren't all saints.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to figure. I'm like, so why do we struggle so mightily, or allow the struggle to overcome us? Jim, what do you feel on this one? What has your opinion been on fasting in general?
When I was at Greek school, we had the sandwich police on Wednesdays and Fridays. Come and grab your sandwich if there was meat in it. But my father's explanation was, when I was a kid, we had meat twice a year. Christmas
Bravo.
and Easter.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason. But now in America, we don't worry about it. So that was his attitude.
But that's not the
It
most
carried no weight.
Yeah, that was natural, right? You just were naturally fasting. But again, it goes back. Okay, so excellent. So you had that attitude, but why is the spiritual? Why is it so hard for us to connect the spiritual
It
to
was
it?
show. It was showmanship. That's all it is. And that's all it was.
Excellent. That's actually a great point. Does everyone understand what we're talking about with showmanship? And then I go back to the scribe and Pharisee, right? I mean, he even says it. In it, he brings up where he says, I'm not like this, the publican, the Pharisee. I'm not like this Pharisee, right? Who's he pick on?
He was praising. The publican was saying.
The publican,
Sinner.
yeah, he's like, I'm not like this Pharisee. Yes.
No, the Pharisee.
The Pharisee, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Pharisee, the one who climbs up and is boasting to God that I fast, that I'm not like this publican.
Because he thought too much of himself.
Naturally, but at the same time, it also goes up to actually what Jim points out, which happens many times, of the showmanship of fasting, where people express to people that they're fasting.
That's forgetting. You lost it.
Now, the thing is, we know the answer to that. I guess my question is, how does that relate to a new generation or to the next generation? Because you realize right now, can I tell you something? I can go on this app called Grubhub. Does anyone know what that is? Okay.
Yeah.
I can literally go to like the nearest steakhouse and I could order a prime rib to be at my house in about 45 minutes. Okay. So what's the point of fasting? Before, people couldn't go get it. Before, when you guys maybe were like teenagers, like, oh, let me go to McDonald's with my car and maybe get some, I get a shake or a cheeseburger or something. It's okay. It doesn't hurt. Now I can do whatever I want. So that's the problem. I always think with our attitudes with the advancement of technology, don't forget, like God allows everything. Do you ever, I always say that God allows everything. Why? I always think these are all
We have
tests.
a choice.
Yeah, it's all tests. It's to see what you're going to do. I think what struggles for me is how hard or how lack of effort we put in to build a relationship with God, not just fasting in general. Because we've said it, right? I brought up the themes, okay? Here, follow God's, oh, someone's in here. I'm sorry, Dimitra. Forgot I didn't see you. Follow God's commandments, hard to live the faith, hard to sing in the liturgy, hard to read the Bible, hard to study the faith, and now hard to fast. Because every single one's difficult. Now I tell people, through the difficulty, I gain perseverance and I build a relationship with God. And I see the fruits of my labor. There's no golden ticket. This isn't Willy Wonka and say, here you go, you're saved, God bless you. Or hey, Chris, I like who you are. Come on down. You're all set. Don't worry about anything. It doesn't work that way. We have to put effort. We have to try. And that's what I tell a lot of people. And I've had some conversations with some priests and even some theologians. I'll even see what they're communicating recently. And one of the big struggles they're saying is that even trying is not enough for God. And I'm like, I have a struggle with that. I do. Why? Because if you're trying, well, what they're trying to imply is that you're already casting in doubt. If you just try, then it means, well, oh, well, if I fail, it is what it is. I tried. So I can see how that matter, because the whole effort should be you try, get yourself back up. But the problem is the relationship with God is not the greatest reward in our lives. Did you hear that? The relationship with God is not the greatest reward in our lives with humanity today. I'm not saying to you, obviously you are. I see your faith and I see you, but it's not, because if it was, I said it Sunday. I said, if we understood how beautiful the liturgies were, I would be like the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well, where when Christ says, I will give you living water and you will never thirst. That's how I want to be every moment of my life, where I want to desire, I want to seek, I want to feed, I want to be, I want to smell, I want to see, I want to touch, and continuously be with God. But how many times does that get kind of, you know what it is? It's like a load of laundry where you start it and you just kind of pile it upon and you can't see the bottom. That's kind of like what we do with God. Just kind of throw stuff on it, right? We see lights, right? We see a few figments of light, but I don't keep it as a focus.
Is the prayer number one with God? We have to talk to him a couple of times, at least a day. At least.
Okay, yeah, but I even reading from church fathers, we see what our Lord has taught us, even in the scriptures, and there's nothing. I cannot see anything that says what's number one. I think the problem that we do is we evaluate every item in a relationship with God to then give precedent to. Some say prayer, some say worship, some say fasting, some say almsgiving, some say this.
Or all of them.
As I said before, if you come up to God, right, and you said, hey, I was talking to you every day, we had a good chat, life was good, Lent came, I fasted and stuff like that, like, here you go. Because remember, the bottom line is, you are going to be the one who's talking to him when he'll say, so what did you do? That's the thing we don't recognize. When I come to God and I offer, that's why it goes back to what Nico says, that's why we're going to talk about that next week, the 19th. When we come back next time, we're going to talk about the sacrament of confession. That sacrament of confession is such a beautiful blessing for us, because at the end of the day, when you are present in front of God, the one thing he asks of you is what is said in Psalm 50. A humble and contrite heart, God will not despise. Did you hear that? A humble and contrite heart, God will not despise. Because if you come to confession and you just offer yourself to God, and the same thing through your struggles, but you don't lose sight of God and try continuously, he sees it. He knows your pain. He knows your struggle. Why? And then I think that's why I then go to people when I talk with them especially about the sadness that comes with illnesses and death. Because I'm the priest who I have to console people. I'm the priest who has to strengthen people, right? Not just in general, all priests do that. But and then there's also times where like I'll see people, and I again, it's the cord is very strong for my family. As yes, we lost my mother-in-law last year, but for 2 years she fought valiantly with her cancer. But there's a lot, and it's very foreign. But I know people who can recognize, who have seen suffering and who have seen struggles, can find a lot of comfort and peace when a loved one has either finally fallen asleep into the Lord, or has gotten peace, has received sacraments or whatever, and then they can finally find that peaceful rest. Because for us as a humanity, we don't recognize that now. We are just so running and going that death, salvation is not at the forefront. It's not Christ, right? That's why I said it's not in that pile of laundry. It's all the way at the bottom. But it only comes to points where, as I said, if someone's older because it's something relative to them, something happened to a family member. That's why death is the hardest thing to deal with as a human, because it's not common. Doesn't happen often to them, right? Unless it strikes them individually, or unless they have a position where they see it often, then they can recognize it. Other than that, that's why I have families. I have people who are very devout Christians, and they cannot, and okay, I get it. And remember this, and I say this appropriately, they can't handle the death as best they can. Or I have other ones who handle it very stoutly. It doesn't matter. There's no uniform answer. The whole premise is, where are you at with your relationship with God so that you can realize the situation around you? So then when death comes, when joy comes, when pain comes, when happiness comes, when all these things happen in our lives, I can realize that it's always an ending with my relationship with God and with each other. That's meaningful. That's humanity, everyone. But we don't recognize that. And then when I say we, I'm talking about humanity. We've expressed it often, what priorities are, what focuses are, and stuff like that. But it's a real struggle. And I think the struggle is beautiful. I really do. And I, even myself, being now in my mid-30s and with a family with 3 kids, I see the struggle because it's nonstop. And you're going to say, where is the respite, right? Where's the, I mean, and you see about that with humans. All of us, we work tirelessly to end what? So I can retire. I always love reading like this meme. There's a new meme that I see is like, you work for 50 years so that you can enjoy 10 years in retirement, right? Wow, ouch.
Does it go like this?
Sometimes it doesn't go that way. Good thing. But so like that's a great point. But I read, I'm like, if you think like that, that's actually not an incorrect statement, because think about it, people are so caught up with work. Oh God, And I have people. That's why I tell a lot of couples. My guys, you gotta not buckle down. We need to level down. We need to come back to earth, because when they get so caught up with work, they get so caught up with achievements, personal gains, and stuff like that. We're losing sight of the big picture. And the big picture is everything involved. That's why I think fasting, just like with everything else in our relationship with God, is the same thing with our day-to-day lives. It's everything. Not one thing in this blinder attitude will make you succeed as a human. Same thing as a Christian, and same thing with the relationship with God and with each other. So that has to be first and foremost. And then you'd be like, wow, that sounds like a lot, Father Chris. You are right. So my question to all of us, that we really have to challenge each other, is how do I persevere over the struggle? Or I don't think persevere might be a correct statement. I'll say, how do you embrace the struggle? How do you embrace the struggle? Because I know people who are afraid of the struggle, right? They're like, well, I'd rather just do this and we'll go from there. And I bring that up because my question to us again is, why do we get to the point where we've turned Christianity into a checklist, right? And that checklist is participation in the formalities. As we've said continuously, the creasters, the days with the gifts given from the church, flour, ayasmo, something. My Yigat told me, my mom makes me, memorials. How do you now revert that to be in an attitude of like, I actually want to live a life of Christ? And then to actually see the beauty of it in all aspects of Christianity: worship, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, fellowship. Everything is all together. So how do you build it into a society where every single one of those has now been disenfranchised? It's disingenuous. It's not necessary for your growth as a human, modern day. But as a Christian, it's even more necessary now than it probably was 2,000 years ago. So how do you revert back to that? Or not revert back to it, embrace it. Because I can promise you, I don't foresee the future generations wanting to fast more than you did. I certainly don't see the future generations wanting to attend worship services more than you do. And I don't see them participating in those other aspects too. And then remember, it's also into the attitude of the sugarcoating. Modern day, because that's even with Christianity now. Modern day Christianity, we have real struggles. And what are those struggles? We see that with modern preachers, right? We got the Joel Osteens, you got this guy, you got this woman, and all these things. And they're all paying off these feelings to you of positivity. And I say, I hear sometimes, I see them, I'll listen to some of what they say, whatever. And I'm just trying to figure out what the end goal is. The end goal. What is the end goal? Because their end goal is just, I can get a public speaker just to speak positive to me about life in general, okay? But what does that have to do with my relationship with God and then my relation to God and how I am currently? Where I might be a single person and I'm struggling. I might be a married person and I'm struggling. I might be a married person with kids and struggling. I might be a widow or widower and struggling. All these aspects. I might be someone.
Struggling, you mean financially?
No, I'd be,
Oh,
see,
no.
well, again, excellent point. Most people, when you say, how are you doing? You say, I'm struggling. They're gonna say, what are you struggling with? Or they assume most of the time struggling is financial. But there's other struggles, emotional, psychological. And remember, these terminologies are not your generation. Jim was excellent. Your dad, my dad too. However, my dad, Army, but he was in between. He was in between. He's okay, he's a little bit older than, no, he's actually around your age. What am I saying? I don't know. My dad, he had a hard attitude, but he was loving, but he wasn't not a father who, he would give me a hug, doesn't kiss you, just to shake your hand. I'm trying to remember, like maybe pat on the back.
Big father.
You know what I mean? But I wasn't expecting emotion. I wasn't expecting that from them. I got it from my mom, but okay. I also recognize my unit, my family unit. Okay, you got what you got, and you went from there. But then it goes back to the point. Now, modern day, which I think many of us have failed on throughout history in some manners, is, and this is the advancement of humanity, right? Where if now we have every need sustained. You have food, you have water, you have bathing, you have every necessity for a general living capacity of a human being. So what's left to take care of them? Now we get into the advanced levels, right? Psychological, emotional, physical, or whatever, are then to go from there. So then the question is, how does that now go into the higher echelons of my relationship with God? You said finances. That's really kind of like an old statement. No, that's not wrong, bravo.
Yeah.
That's an old statement.
Because to me, that doesn't mean anything.
So, but how do you now handle with people's struggles now, modern day? Because most modern day struggles are very much psychosomatic and emotional based. They're not financial, they're financial. Where we see modern day, people don't want to work, right? Work's irrelevant. I don't need finances. It is
They're
what it is.
hiring all over.
So they're doing whatever you want. So how do you now address the psychological and emotional distress of a general human being as an Orthodox Christian?
You have to be in peace, and to be in peace.
That's not possible. That's not easy though.
I accept it, and when.
Yeah, but you're also an example where you're understanding peace in your terms.
Yeah, well, peace, when you feel peaceful, when you.
You do realize if I talk to a drug addict, when they're high, they feel they're at peace too. I'm trying to give you a relation. They're in some type of euphoria. I know, but I know yours comes from your relationship with God. But how do you deal with people who have those situations?
You have to thank God for the blessings you get every day.
But if they don't see that, you got to remember speaking to people and understand. You just got to go back to Scripture. Did you ever hear God when He first spoke to anyone to tell them to thank God or to say count their blessings? Look at the woman with the flow of blood for 12 years. She had to go behind him just to touch his hand. And then he said, like, power perceived came from him. And then he says, who touched me? He knew, but it was to highlight this person in particular. And then she came with so much, then she says, But what did he do? This is where then God's strength comes into play for all of us. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. If you have no faith, you can't get to the peace part. And so we see that as well too here. And that comes with us as well when we struggle. Because then we have to ask ourselves, that's hard though. Because what have we constituted faith now? You gotta talk about now, 2022. Faith the people. Faith is like, I think the institution of it, first of all, has been extremely damaged. You look at any faith-based institution, they're very weak. Why? Because with scandals, with abuses, with extortion and money and embezzling, stuff like that, man, it's black marks across the board. It doesn't matter about Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you name it, it's not strong. So then when we're realizing that I don't need this, and I could do how I want, when I want, and I'll be just fine, what happens to generation 2 after that, and generation 3?
Some people, they remember God when they have a sickness.
That's the most common.
Well, I have to tell you something with my God died in Greece,
Mm,
okay? Saint Constantine and Saint Helen, Σταυρολιώσα, είναι 3 τετράγωνα από τις ανιψιάς μου το σπίτι.
okay,
Ήμουν στην Ελλάδα 5 εβδομάδες. Δεν έχασα εκκλησία.
she,
Μου έδειξε η ανιψιά μου η Τούλα, καλά να είναι που την αγαπά τόσο πολύ. Τι λέει, βλέπεις στον δρόμο. Όταν βλέπεις εκείνο τη γωνία, πήγαινε προς τα εδώ, προς τα εκεί, θα τον είναι στον Άγιο Κωνσταντίνο. Είναι πιο ψηλότερος από την εκκλησία από εδώ.
mhm,
Όταν ήρθε η επιδημία, η κόρη της είναι η βαπτιστήρα μου, Ασπασία, της αδερφής μου το όνομα. Μου είπε η ανιψιά μου στο τηλέφωνο, με πιάσαν τα γέλια, αλλά δεν της είπα τίποτα. Λιβάνιζε η βαπτιστήρα μου συνέχεια.
why?
Γιατί είχε και το νέο το παιδί, να μην πιάσουν την επιδημία. Λιβάνιζε και προσευχότανε.
Oh my
Και
gosh,
λέω, η εκκλησία είναι 3 τετράγωνα από το σπίτι
but they
σας
wouldn't go.
και δεν πατάτε. Τώρα τον χρειάζεται το Θεό. That's what I said inside. I
Oh.
felt so bad.
And it doesn't even, that's Scobie, it doesn't even relate to
My
them.
sister, she was always in church. My mother was always in church. And at the village, they have the bell.
Yes.
First, second, third. My mother was there when she's supposed to. But my sister, Aspasia, God rest her soul, she was always with the church. But her family doesn't go. They go Easter. Even, I think I told you, I told Father Peter. Στην αγάπη. Η βαπτιστήρα μου, ο άντρας της, όλη η νεολαία από την Αθήνα ακούσατε στο χωριό μας. Εμείς είχαμε την αγάπη μέσα στον Άγιο Νεκτάριο και εκείνα παίζανε σάκα, ποδόσφαιρο και τώρα έχουν βάλει και double doors. Η εκκλησία.
So they don't hear?
No, έχουν βάλει gates και το κλειδώνε να μην πέσουν τα παιδιά στη σκάλα, γιατί έχει μεγάλη σκάλα να κατεβούν κάτω στον δρόμο.
Oh my gosh.
Και ακούς boom, boom και λέει και εγώ, my God.
But can you believe, isn't it, but can you believe it to the level?
I felt so bad, but I kept my mouth shut. I'm not there to tell them,
You can't
what the
force
heck you
people to
doing?
go to
Why
church.
you do things?
Now, my kids have to go to church, no choice. But they want to go, they're used to it since they were born.
That's what they know.
My daughter, my son.
I wish I can say the
No.
same.
Oh,
Now you take like
I
9/11,
had
Oh,
everybody.
hold on, shh, Chris is
sorry.
talking.
you take like 9/11, okay, it happened.
Mhm.
As soon as it happened, everybody got together, they worked up. It was a big problem.
Yeah.
It takes maybe 1-2 years or something like that, then it starts dying down. Now you take this summer, you had a funeral with the mother and the father passing away
Mhm.
at the same time. How do you think their family felt to see their mother and father go? They knew the mother and father are going together as one, as a family. They're going up there together. I know the families killed or bad, but they know that the mother and father are in peace.
It's very tough. Well, And that one especially, it's harder because, you've lost two at once. You know, it's one thing to lose one parent, and then you mourn that, but to lose both, it's like a void. You're like, my gosh, like, I can't imagine in the holidays. I mean, a holiday last year, they were all together, and now two of them are gone. But then here's the problem. We're talking about that one at a level where illness, okay, we get it. We're very spoiled here, especially in the States. I mean, we're talking about, well, not so much so, because if you just went to the city, you hear 10 killed, 50 shot over the weekend, you know, whatever you want. There are,
That's common.
there's numbers of people who lose and die. And I look at it, it's like, we're immune to it. We become desensitized. We're desensitized to pain. We're desensitized to prayer and everything else, where it's like, again, I worry for the future because there's no, like, it's not that there's no options, it's just that like nothing seems viable to what needs to be done to help humanity. Because we are so like, look now, like, and I think it's all relative. I think from the political system to this and to that, all parties, all situations, we've become ruled by greed and wealth, that we don't care how or who we step on, and that God's not present in that manner. And if it is, it's a formality. I always find it kind of comical whenever politicians go to a church and they'll say something in the pulpit. Like you'll see, especially like in the in the urban settings, they'll go up and like go welcome a politician or a candidate's running for something. It's like, the game what? Is that person really prayerful or real? And again, then you could throw that back at me. Father, who are you to judge? Excellent point. I'm not implying to judge. But what I'm trying to say is, what do we do in these situations? Because it goes back to the whole premise. Because that's us as Orthodox. Do you know the other denominations, if they fast or not? I mean, Catholicism, I know.
We're the only ones.
Bingo. And Catholicism, their Lenten one, I'll never forget it. Oh my Lord. I remember I was fasting, so my parents made me fast. So how was my fast? Up until high school, like the cheeses and the stuff, and I would eat fish or grilled cheeses, peanut butter and jelly, especially during Lent and stuff like that. So it wasn't bad. But my friends will be like, oh yeah, I fast too. I gave up something. I only gave it up for 2 days. And I'm like, keep up the good work. And that's like giving up an individual thing. So I would just,
Chocolate.
yeah,
Somebody
something,
give up
but that's
chocolate.
irrelevant. Smoking, I say, give it up.
Yeah,
I-
that's
Give up
good.
smoking from home. Yeah.
And then you tell them, keep it going. That's the thing with Lento. That's the whole point of the fasting. The fast is supposed to be a cleansing so you can continue it. It's not to say, like we are so bad. I mean, I am too. Literally, I cannot wait for Agape to be over to go to the nearest at me, take some bite of the skin, and enjoy the rest of my day. But you're-
How about a lot of people, they leave the church after
I
the
think,
resurrection?
I think that's one thing that's sort of this Orthodox, we sort of become strange from other Christians, because Catholics no longer fast. But
Protestants
Yeah,
don't.
there's a good friend of mine who's Catholic, and he sort of wishes that they still fasted. But, what they do is, they're, at least during Lent, they said, give up something that's important to you. And I mentioned to him, he says, well, to be truthful, it would be more meaningful for me to give up video games during Lent than to fast. And he said, why don't you? And so for the first time, the last 2 weeks of Lent, I gave up video games for 2 weeks, which is harder for me than, than to fast.
Yeah, but I find it. I would just comment. I was just blown away. I'm really like blown away by this because, and that's only us, you're right? Protestants don't fast. It's not even a process. It's not even discussed.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what do you do with it? And that's where my struggle. That's where my struggle is, because it's such a beautiful aspect. I tell you, out of the fast, I always look forward to the Lenten one because of the uniqueness of Lent. I mean, Lent is. That's why it's called Megali Tesarakosti. The other ones are not. They're like Sarakosti. Okay, the 2 weeks Dekabedavus, all right, but Dekabedavus, those are Megali Sarakosti. It actually has its own ethos because it has different services. The period changes, the mood changes, the modes change. But in everything and always, it's still continuously, it's not in mourning, It's always giving glory to God, but for us to self-reflect. That's why that last Sunday, that Cheese Fair Sunday, the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise is really just for us to think about our fallen state and to really say, so it's really the final question to us. You got to ask yourself that question. And that's what I do in my prayer all the time. Because I ask myself I ask Lord, give me the strength and how I can grow my relationship with you. Give me the wisdom, give me the enlightenment. And then I look at St. Gregory Palamas, where his lily, all he says is, what does he say? He says, enlighten my darkness. Fortishon tonumo, in other words, enlighten my mind. Because we are in the darkness, we're in a skotadi, and the problem is we don't recognize on how to break through it. And then sadly, now we don't recognize it's not only do we not recognize, now it's not even a point to do it. So you talk to people about fasting. If I talk to people my age about fasting, it's comical. So then what they do with fasting and with church to their children, they do the same thing that Greek school was done to them. It's initiation. I did it, so you do it. So then they'll tell their kids, we got to go to this church service because I had to, so you have to. At that rate, if that's how everything is, gosh, why do we even have churches in the first place? And I think
Too many cars taking off from the parking lot.
there's
What
other
the heck is this people?
there's other activities going on.
You know, it's ironic, Father, I have an Arabian friend, he's Muslim,
Mm.
and he knows, he asked.
Well, they
me-
fast, right? We know
They
Ramadan, yeah.
fast. When I go over to his house, are you guys fasting? He's mindful.
Wow.
It's, you know,
I find theirs interesting. I really do. The morning to the night, and then you can eat whatever you want at night. I talk to
They
them.
usually eat.
You know how much they eat at
I
night?
don't know that.
Yeah,
they
but
eat
at night
meat.
it's a banquet.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
it
it's
is.
not, but I don't think that they eat meat because they have that idol
Some
feature
of
at
them
the
are
end where they
supposed
have
to
a
have
big,
certain-
where they slaughter a lamb or
Ah.
and all of that.
But I was-
I think, their Ramadan was based on our Lent. But at least that they.
I'm just shocked at how much
It's
it
different,
cha-
they eat.
Yeah, but it changes. I couldn't believe how much it changes with the cycles. I mean, I usually
Yes,
stick
it's
with the
moving.
fall. I mean, it's all over the time.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I didn't get that either. I was actually shocked. I always thought it was fall.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a fall, early winter, but no, I've
No,
seen the
no, no,
spring.
it moves.
Short year.
Yeah.
Now is a good time to have it because the sun comes in the morning late
Well, I have friends.
and goes.
I remember specifically
this-
I remember specifically in high school when we were playing football, when it was sundown, they literally took off their pads, their shoulder pads, and went and began prayer, like three kids that were Muslim. In the grass facing that way.
Yeah.
And I would stare at them, and I remember it was very vivid to me, and I'm like, I know people who are afraid to do their cross. And these guys in front of me have no
I
worries.
Totally agree.
You know what I mean? And they have no problem doing their prayer and stuff like that. And then so much so that the coaches understood that because they had a discussion before, so they were not ashamed of their faith. And even till they're safe for the food, so they would then stop and eat when sundown, and then we still have practice for another half hour, and then they go with their families and go to their stuff. That's actually quite remarkable. I always get the slaps to my face because I'm like, man, but I was pretty stout in the sense that when we would have any practices on Sundays, which are not very, so when we had playoff seasons, maybe like one or two of mine in high school. And I told them, I said, I can't, I go to church, plus I have other activities. I'll come later, but the problem was, this is what it gets you, but this is why I'd like everyone to remember, this is why the families are so addicted to the sports, is that if you don't practice, you don't play. You heard what I said, if you don't practice, you don't play, so it's almost the same thing, we gotta now turn that into our faith, you don't practice, there's no salvation. And that's a reality, the problem is we all think we have a golden ticket. And that's the reality, because if we don't practice, we don't play, if I'm not with God, we all can't pull the Constantine and say on my deathbed, I'll just, repent and get baptized and, hey, get confession, communion, you're all set. That's why I tell people, that's the hardest thing for you to realize. And I say this openly here. I don't say it to people when I go see them at the end, but it's a reality. When you call the priest at the end, first of all, in the Orthodox Church, there are no last rites. Don't ever forget that. There are no last rites, okay? We come to offer prayers, and the prayers are still for health and well-being and comfort, noting the situation. Secondly, there is one prayer, but it's extremely, extremely rare. And that prayer is then called the prayer of separation from soul and body. We're asking God to this person who's either in complete discomfort or in a comatose state, that if this is your will, allow them to find rest, go into your heavenly abode, but that's very rare, very case by case situation. And then you then anoint them, you read other prayers, you ask God to be merciful and watch over them. But there's no last right to say, like, whatever I say, because the person's not gonna be sick. I mean, I can't say that, but it's not, we think that if we go there at the very end, that they're gonna be set. And I tell people, I don't know, and you don't know. We pray, we think, it's good to call a priest, so I'm not implying not to, but then I get people like, it's like they're asking me to make sure that I'm like, I'm just a priest, I'm just here to offer. We hope. And that's what I'm trying to tell them. That hope is such a strong word. It's that 4-letter word that's also then it overlaps with love. Because if he's love, then I know I have hope. And if I have hope, then I know I have love at the same time too.
Hope for what?
Anything. I don't know what's gonna happen
I
afterwards.
mean, if a person is ready to go,
You don't know though. Even with Tom. There's
Tom
no,
told you, I'm going
not,
today.
not that he's gonna die. The point that
I am
if he's gonna
getting
be,
my daughter there.
if he's gonna be saved, if he's gonna be in heaven, I don't know. I'm telling you, I buried people.
That we don't know.
Bravo, so that's what I'm trying to imply. I buried people where there's no family. Okay, you know what that is? Where me, the two funeral directors and some person came and brought in a body. I did the service, we offered the prayers, and you don't know. I don't
They
know.
have no family?
Either that or it was
Or
very
they were
minimal.
not talking to each other?
No,
I
not
don't
that.
have any
There was
family
literally, there was
here
so, no, Ethan is so minimal, people thought, and it might have been a destitute too, but we still do it.
I went to a funeral home in my neighborhood. First time of my life, I've been in a lot of American funerals.
When I was thinking about Ramadan, it's sort of like, on the first day of Lent, we have the Kurumi.
Yeah, mhm.
And it's, I think that's what their fast is like. They fast during the day and then they have a simple meal,
Well, because
It's
then,
not a simple meal. They eat
Because-
in the morning.
because even
I
Qatar,
have them in my house.
Okay.
They
Well,
eat
you
in
know
the
more than I do.
morning,
You know more than I
very
do.
good,
You know
and then
more
they
than I
don't eat all day.
even, but Qatar the Ftara, they're actually supposed to say the whole week's supposed to be Qatar, the whole week, not just Qatar the Ftara.
Yeah.
We imply it to be, clean Monday, and then people are like, oh, I gotta go fly a kite. Do what? I mean, it means nothing, but we do it as a tradition, but I'm like, that's gonna, again, I asked the questions to the person.
There are some.
No, Qatar the Ftara. No, they don't.
Don't eat until the.
Maybe in your audio,
Narin is lobster
Who
cadet.
went we went to my sister's house.
Athens is a megalopolis.
It's Mykonos.
Not in Athens, they're all over the place.
Che Maria,
Quem tá ganhando
Petrinha,
com isso?
Saxarato, Apolos, dos Colheus, Padremenos,
So you all decided to make Agni on Qatar the Ftara.
Maiden. I made
I never heard of that.
That's happy stuff though. And then you flew the kite too? You hit the thought, right? Is that what it is?
Oh, Polish,
Alright, finish up, yeah, that's
97 years old, she died.
97.
5 kids in the family. Well, the one convinced the old lady to give it everything. Now, Bernice was with her family over this side of the funeral in Lake Zurich. The rest of the brothers and sisters with their families over there.
The thing
She's
is,
over
Mine
there
all
in St.
died.
Michael.
Mine,
like you say,
Okay.
nobody's, even you take the archbishop, when he
I never
dies,
did a funeral.
you don't know where he's going.
That's what I try to tell everyone. So I think that's, the whole point is the aspect of what we talked about for tonight with the fasting and all of our aspects of our relationship with God is they all count. And you should be living it with the uncertainty of what's gonna happen at the end. But the problem is none of us think about that. That's why we do just what we do. And I laugh when people tell me, hey, Father, I was able to come to church these 2 weeks. I said, wow, great. Let's try next Sunday. You know what I mean? But to them, they thought they did something. Me, I'm like, but you know what I mean? But I'm like, but to me, that's irrelevant. But then if they said to me, hey, Father, I've been trying to come to church more often, but I've also enhanced myself in giving to the poor. I try to fast, all that stuff, because that's what the account to God is. I don't care about anything else, because you're the one that has to talk to God. And that's why on Judgment Sunday, when he tells us, there's a really beautiful icon that said Saints Peter and Paul. I believe the iconographer last name was Terziz. And he painted this really beautiful icon. It's 6 panel, very small though. And it's of the examples of what Christ said. He's like, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was thirsty, did you give me drink? When I was in prison, did you visit me? When
A
I was,
Stranger.
yeah, stranger, you welcome me. Is it 5? I think it's 5.
Father, a kidnapper, like that was a gypsy.
I know, I love them. You guys always have stories.
Because
But
that's
anyways,
how
okay,
people-
no, I know, we don't need no leptomanias, we'll have to create our own show for the two of you. So anyways. Anyways, the reality is, we have to be mindful of our relationship with God. And we have to put an effort in every aspect, but just try it. I mean, even if you fast half of the week, or you do some aspects, so whatever it is. But then I get the other avenue, just to finish on this topic, where Theodora Froso will tell me the same things too, where especially the elders of the church will not take communion because of their medications or whatever it is. And I'm very staunch about that. And I talk with other clergy, also we're on the same page. You must do what your doctor tells you to take care of. And then in manner, okay, understand the situation so that you can also lead to want to participate in the sacrament of Holy Communion. So the example, if it says my pills say I need to eat something in the morning with this pill, I said eat something. Okay, it's not the end of the world. Drink water, wash your mouth, and then prepare yourself so that you can receive Holy Communion. If you've already prepared the rest of the week, you try. Okay. And I tell people when you're eating something, it's very simple. Eat something simple. You don't have to eat a 3-omelet egg. Eat a piece of toast. Eat something micro so you can get you through. Same thing with oh my gosh, I had it take to be Chicago. I had a woman who had Zakaro, in other words, who had diabetes. She passed out maybe once a month. Literally every pew, and I'd be like,
That's what I'm afraid.
oh my Lord. And we felt frustrated for her and for them, because, and what she say, I was trying to take communion today. It defeats the purpose of the communion. I hope people realize that. If you don't take care of yourself, what is the necessity of communion? If you can't take it. And then go to the other side of the picture. You deny yourself communion, what is the purpose of it? So in other words, I tell people, make every effort, however you can, to take communion. Now, yes, I know, I'm not implying it's not just fast food. No, we pray, we fast, confession, you give alms, stuff like that. If there's something heavy on your mind and you feel that you can't, or you did something, it's understandable. Don't make it a habit. That's where it becomes a problem. We make these into habits where we're denying ourselves Christ. So now we go into the other attitude. I'm actually participating in these issues and fasting, and I don't take communion. That to me during Lent is the most schizophrenic thing I can't understand with Orthodox Christians. You fast and you don't come for communion. What are you fasting for? For Pascha, 30 days later. What are those other Sundays? What if you don't make it till then?
Yeah, but when I was a kid, we didn't take communion that often.
I know.
It
really was.
We didn't, did
because of the Turkish history.
True.
And
it's true. And that's what I try to tell people. I understand where everyone came from. I mean, Theodora has taught me about her Kodio and other ones. Literally, if you think about it, if there was no priest, obviously there wasn't every Kodio, they would rotate. So by the time they got to your Kodio, they would do multiple things for just the day or the weekend. And everyone tried to take communion then. And so that's why it's so infrequent. And then you were taught that at least to try to do major points.
Yeah, but Father Chris, the way we grew up in the village, because I came here 20 years old, you're not supposed to. I see the same people in our church here, and in Pittsburgh too, you see the same people taking Holy Communion. What are they fasting? When?
You don't
Friday
know.
and Wednesday.
But you don't know. But then hold on. Here's the other thing. Okay, so you gotta start with.
No, people, they went to a dance. In average person.
Okay, but then the problem is.
When-
Perimene. Okay, all right. So simple, no. But then you have a problem here. But that's Ciprinis.
No. The way we grew up, we're not supposed to have it.
Correct.
My mother,
Correct.
we were
Maybe
fasting the whole week,
they.
the whole week.
Listen, I know that was the other thing. That's changed too. The whole week is not necessary.
Okay, or 3 days later.
Simeon always told us if you fast Wednesday and Friday and fast the morning before you take communion, that's enough.
Yeah, so correct.
but
The young one.
Okay. No, I don't cream them. I said,
Well, I don't care what the other.
I don't know what, that's their,
Is it a form of?
That's their
But when I was a
business.
child, that's the way we fasted too. We started the Sunday before, we took confession.
If that's the, if that's the case, then you're only gonna take communion once a year.
Strict fast for the entire week.
Well, ponte tus sales of the mothers, what do I do it for?
But we
You're
don't-
not wrong. I get it.
No,
I'm trying to-
they're cool.
What were you gonna say? Nico?
My father never passed.
I know. Nico, what were you gonna say? Lunch.
Is it a form of pride if you go above what the church provides as guidelines for fasting? Or-
Good point. I don't know. I actually think I truly believe that it's just ignorance. And then now you gotta understand, there's a lot of leptomedias, fine details. What are fine details? Are you in good standing? Do you know what good standing means? It means you have no impediments. Also, if you're divorced, did you get your ecclesiastical divorce? There's a lot of things that people don't think about. But then, yeah, have you gone to confession? Because I know people that just come up and nonchalant and do their thing. But who am I to judge? The extreme rare cases come up where then something, or I'll recognize, for instance, I'll see once in a great while, I'll see someone do their cross Catholic and I'll be like, are you Orthodox? And they'll be like, no, let me just offer them a blessing and you go from there. I saw that. If I don't see them do it, I ask them their name, they go from there.
Well, what if somebody was Orthodox and they still did their cross Catholic?
Well, I would
You know,
ask,
they might have been a
Where did
convert.
they learn that?
well, that's what I would
They
say.
might have been a convert.
No, good point. I'm not implying, but at least if they told me that they're Catholic, then I know just offer them a blessing.
Okay.
But if not that, I don't ask it frequently.
Mhm.
Like I said, this would have been like an obvious, visible action in front of me where they'll be like, okay. And you can tell because they're also expecting a part two. I've seen them in numerous cases, like they'll open their mouth and they'll leave it open. And they'll think like either you're gonna give something else or something like that. That's usually what I've seen with Catholics. Coptics sometimes as well too, but okay, it is what it is. But I see that. But then out east in Boston, I used to see this as well too. There were a lot of Orthodox Christians who take communion with their mouth left open, and the priest would dump it in it like a tink. I used to keep hearing I was chanting. I'll never forget it. That was the funniest thing. I'm chanting, and every time they were taking communion, I was doing the communion hymn, and I would hear like tink. And again, tink. And I'm like, what the heck is this tink? And then I look, and I see the priest and the people have their mouths open, just literally kind of twist his hand. And I'm like, oh my
I've seen that
gosh.
too.
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not bad. I don't know what it is. It's just, I find it to be odd. And again, foreign to me. And that's the same issue that came about with the pandemic, which also then came up with the issue with AIDS and any other disease, where the people were then afraid to take communion, right? Is it transmittable? And blah, 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 and this and that. I mean, you get everything under the sun where then you have priests and they're offering multiple spoons. There are still priests who still offer multiple spoons. I don't know if they're right, I don't know if they're wrong.
They're wrong.
You can't judge. That's an incorrect statement.
No,
Stop, don't continue.
I
Stop.
don't judge, but
But
I.
then you made a statement. Because
No,
you said
I
they're
don't
wrong.
believe you get sick from the.
All right, it's done. Thank you. But I'm just implying that we can't critique these situations. Sometimes it's per the situation, per they are, or if there's a reigning hierarchy who tells them, you never know. Okay, they might say, I want you to do multiple spoons, or I want you to do this and that, or whatever. You never know, but that's the example. And so we have to be really mindful about understanding the fasting and what's proper fasting. And when we're talking, like I said, Philona makes a great point. You're conditioned one manner to be fasting the whole time. Now modern day, and I don't think they've lightened it. I think that's a realistic fast, where if you actually even look during Lent, Wednesdays and Fridays are stricter than Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays during Lent. In other words, Wednesday and Friday especially, you shouldn't have oil. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, if you have like a fasolada that had oil in it, or you had a salad that had a little oil, you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. But I have people like, oh no, like this. Sorry, eight. And then I'm like, okay, if that's the case, then, and then you're gonna be, and then what do they do? There's the problem with the fasting. What you just said, if they do the whole week, they're like, that's hard. It's a deterrent. I don't take communion. So in essence, O diavolo scavi said, because he's made it that much harder for me to want to take communion. There's your bottom line answer. So when people tell me that, I said, then great, then take communion every week and fast. I'm like, well, I can't do that. Okay, then you better figure out a way on how to want to. Do you hear what I said? Want to, because the hymn that we chant in the Proyasmani Liturgia, the pre-sanctified liturgy, right before people come up for communion, in Greek says, Yevsaste ke idete Oti kalos είναι ο Χριστός. In other words, come, taste and see how good is the Lord. And that is what you are called to do. The first Christians could not wait for the Sunday services to then receive the precious body and blood of Christ. From the catacombs, from the hidden ways, wherever they were. That was their goal, that was their zeal. Look at us now. Now I'm coming up with excuses, everything and under the sun, I'm not to. First fear, then fasting, then I don't like the papa, I don't like the quinonia, you name it, whatever it is. I'll figure out. I tell people now, we have so many more excuses than reasons to want to do stuff. Go back to the bottom line, what's the point?
Yeah, I remember once getting a couple of students at one time. Basically, he talked to his congregation a sermon, and he told them if you didn't take communion for 3 weeks, you're out.
Yeah, you're excommunicated.
You know.
Badasso.
You know, so I think, I think that Christians used to take communion often, but then when the Turks came in and we didn't have the right priesthood, we didn't have seminaries, we didn't have Bibles. Then we went to what, Father Chris said, where the bishop would come around, they would have like, maybe communion every 3 months or every 6 months.
If they were lucky.
If they were lucky.
You know what I mean? And you had to go to the situation. I know people not like, imagine if you're an Orthodox Christian, you live in a land where there's no churches.
Yes.
And they exist. Middle East, possibly Africa, Asia.
Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay, Bloomington, Indiana. What do you do? So what do you do? And so you then desire. It's the same thing with you said about 9/11, where the churches were filled and then dwindled down. Post-COVID, or what COVID, when we were closed and we were opening, everyone's like, oh, I gotta be there and I want to sign up and register and stuff like that. How quickly things change. How quickly things
I was
change.
gonna ask you, what about, how is it now?
I can't determine because our church is an anomaly. Our church is a growing church. We have a lot of families. You see it on Sundays. Now, the one thing that you also see though, as well as we also have a lot of memorials. The memorials signify that there were a lot of funerals. These are, they're short. These aren't like, memorials for like 3, 5, 10 years. A lot of them are shorter period, 49 months, 1 year, 2 years, stuff like that. So then you get a lot of families that come. I guess the reality is, I'm not implying that, this trend's gonna kind of, plateau off. I don't think that our church is over high with funerals. I just think it's a reality to the generation that's passing away. It's either 87, it's either founders or second generation or third generation people that started these communities. And so now in turn, they're the ones who are now passing on to, God willing, the heavenly abode. But, we have to be mindful of it and recognize that's reality. You know what I mean? So that's just what happens with us and with these situations and with what's going on. But no, I can't say anything. I mean, and everything, all of our numbers have either they've increased. There's not one area in our church that's not increased. In other words, ministries, activities, even Bible study. I mean, look, we have about a little bit more than we have usually. We used to have sometimes like 4 to 5. Now we have more like 12. Our Tuesday ones, which have been a nice refresh. And I want to try to involve it for so it could be a activity for some of our older people as well too. We have 12 to 15 people in here.
There's
It's
one
great.
lady south, Evangelia,
She's not south, she's west, she's in Bartlett.
yes, somebody
west.
from there, she's willing to come.
I know the problem is it's hard. I only know like 2 people that live close by that could get her. So they said they can help her for Sundays, but the other days it's a little bit tough.
Nobody wants to get me.
I'm getting.
Nobody's scared to drive
Efimil
home.
still alive, right, Father?
But
Efimil. She's in her 90s. Alma used to bring her. Alma is down there.
Good question. And Bexy to Applegate and Alma once in a great while too.
Alma
So
was she was always here.
well, Alma was the remember with the Nexarians too.
She was here.
She ran everything. So
She was here
The
Tuesday.
Italians are gone.
we'll start we're starting something new in that place. So
I'm going.
anything else tonight, everyone, after our talk with our fast and our other discussion? I do thank you for joining us online. Bonnie, sorry for, I don't know if you had anything to say, Dimitra or anything. We got we got a nice group right here, that, enjoys.
I would only say one thing,
Yeah, go ahead, Bonnie.
and this would be, more applicable to me personally. And that is that as a child, when my grandmother and grandfather lived in the house with us, my grandmother was extremely observant. And she went to church. Well, we all went to church every Sunday. There was never a question about that. That was something that just happened all the time. But my grandmother fasted. She prayed at home. She was an excellent cook, so she could make a soup with vegetables practically out of nothing. And so the things that she did, I learned from. But she passed away when I was in my 30s. And little by little, well, we still went to church as a family, but little by little, some of those things that we used to do, we didn't do anymore. I can tell you that between my mother, father, and myself, and my brother, I was the only one who ever went to communion with my grandmother. And I was in the family where you didn't ask your mother, well, how come I have to go to communion? How come you don't go to communion? We weren't raised to talk that way to anyone, especially not our parents. So, for me, I would say it wouldn't hurt at all for someone to say to me, like, okay, so you haven't been fasting for a long time and you haven't been to communion for a long time. So here's how you should begin. This is what you can do. And if you put it in your heart to do it, just like we put it in our heart every day to get proper rest and to exercise and to another thing I was raised for and taught by my grandmother was to do good in the world. That when she would say, if you're unhappy, in Romanian, she would tell me, Fă un bine pentru cineva. Do something good for something else, for someone else. And I believe my father was raised that way. So sometimes I think perhaps if we just receive gentle reminders about what we should do and how we can approach it, because what we haven't done in the past is done with. But tomorrow is another day, and we can start to improve on the things that we do. Because
Bonnie, that's a great point. I actually love what you said there, especially that, because I see this often now. We got to finish up. It's kind of late now. But the communion, the percentage of parents that take communion with their little kids, it's got to be 10%. They all shove them up to me, like here, and I give them communion, and the parents won't take communion. So at some point, those kids, just like you said, Bonnie, will ask the question, why do I have to take communion if you don't take communion? Or then, what's the hardest part? And I see it, and as me as a priest, I'm pretty calm, I understand. But there's a big problem, and the problem is when you don't take the children often, and then you force them to come and try and take communion, of course they're going to be afraid or shake their head. Like I had last week, I think like a 4-year-old who did not want to take communion. And she's like staring at me, she's like shaking her head. And even I just put the stool, no, nothing. And then what's worse is the parent or the grandparents forcing it. I said, stop, just stop. It's okay. Let her receive the antidote. If she wants to try and come up later at the end by us, we'll do it. And we tried at the end and it worked. But it's very awkward. And again, it goes back to the question I asked in the beginning. Is that's going to save them? Where's the teaching point of that one? And that's the reality. I said, I could have been mean. I said, why don't you take communion? Let her see. But we don't recognize that. We just force or we imply. And sadly, it doesn't work that way. And we have to be mindful of that as well, too. But Bonnie, excellent points on your end. Thank you for your insight on that. It was really nice. Dimitra, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I'm good. It was very interesting tonight.
Thank you, Dimitra, for always being online with us, and with us in person sometimes too as well. Well, thank you, everyone. I know it's a little late. I want to thank you for your presence and your participation. Have a beautiful evening. We'll meet up for our following conversations, and
Right.
we'll go from there. All right.